Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Glasgow Motorway Archive podcast. I'm Stuart Baird.
And I'm John Hassall.
John, good to see you again. We're also joined this episode by PC Nick. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful, guys. Thanks very much for having me back again. It's been a while.
Not at all. We're always delighted to have you here, and I should make the point for the listeners that we are all digital this month in terms of we're not on one space, so you might notice just some slight changes in our audio quality this episode. Apologies for that if it's not up to its usual pristine standard.
Quite good mics. I think it should be okay.
Should be okay, but if you do notice a difference this month, that explains it. Basically, we're doing this via Zoom, so hopefully it works out well for everybody.
Wonderful technology.
Indeed. Yeah. Anyway, John, so what we're going to be talking this time then?
Well, we're actually going to be revisiting kind of an old topic here because we did have PC Nick on before, and it was great. We had loads of questions for him, but over the time between that and this one, we have got some more questions. You know, a few questions from the members of the public as well.
Yeah, I mean, things have obviously changed a great deal since last Christmas when Nick was last on with us.
Absolutely. Nick, I believe this is your third podcast with us.
It is, yes, third time. I'm surprised he's wanted me back.
Well, you know, you're so popular, you know.
Well, I think one of the ones you were on, Nick, was one of our most popular ones ever. So, yeah, it's good to have you back.
That's right.
Also, this month as well, we will be talking about some of the big changes coming to the website, which Stuart will fill you in with, and some of the work we've been doing with the digitising, which is full steam ahead now.
Yeah, indeed, because we're still limited with what we can do publicly in terms of engagements and that sort of thing. So
frees us up to do this. That's why some of the social media images, they've been great, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. Okay then. So, Nick, the first time you appeared, we questioned you on a number of issues relating to roads policing. And for those who haven't maybe heard Nick's previous podcast, Nick works with the Road Policing Unit for Police Scotland in Glasgow. So Nick has a real insight into the workings of the motorway system in a way that perhaps is slightly different to John and I, you know, who have been more in the operational side of things or the engineering side of things. So Nick is sort of uniquely placed to give us an insight into some of the things that people are maybe interested in, but that John and I can't answer.
Exactly. I mean, between the three of us, we all have flashing lights on the top of our cars at work, but Nick's are blue.
Yeah, he's the only one here who can do whatever he wants, whenever he wants.
Not really, but
I'm sure you'll clear that up for us.
Yeah. So what we thought this episode then was we're going to have just a general chat. We're going to have a look at some of those questions that we answered previously. Obviously, the world has changed a great deal in the 18 months since Nick was first with us. And he was back last Christmas where we discussed some other issues. But now seems like a good time to just have another catch-up on policing issues across the motorway system and Nick's take on things and how that ties in with what you and I are seeing when we're out and about as well. Okay. So, Nick, if that sounds okay with you, I think we'll make a start and start chatting about things in general.
Yeah, more than happy. Bring the questions on.
Yeah.
Okay.
The grilling begins.
Yeah. So this is going to be a reasonably light grilling for you, I'm sure. And I think the theory is here, we'll ask you a question and that'll lead into other subjects in different areas, and that should sustain us long enough to keep everybody entertained.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
The only bad thing I'm going to say before these questions start is there's no donuts. Nick, you brought the donuts last time for us, and it was fantastic.
He did.
I didn't even think this time. I should have sent some through to you guys.
You should have digitally delivered some donuts.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hang on, I'll ping you a couple of emojis. How's that?
Doesn't taste the same, Nick. Okay.
Deary me.
So,
oh, brilliant.
I'm going to kick off and ask you the first question, which kind of leads from Stuart's introduction. There is been a bit of time that's passed, and it has been quite unprecedented what's happened in 2020. So my first question is, Nick, how has your policing role changed due to the pandemic?
It hasn't. Our core role, we still perform our core duties. We still make sure people are safe in the roads. We still try and educate other road users. We still have to enforce legislation when it has to be enforced. Our biggest change that we notice, and I hate saying the Q word, and you guys have probably heard it as well, but the roads were significantly quieter. Certainly near the start of lockdown, when the first lockdown sort of came in, we started noticing, roads were absolutely empty. As an aside to that, what we started to see and what we put out media-wise as well is that we're seeing more people either trying to take advantage of the quieter road networks or not really appreciating what the speed limits were on the road at the time.
And there's a fact here that people might appreciate regarding the Glasgow motorway system and the reduced traffic flows. It was the longest sustained period of congestion-free motorways in Glasgow since August 1980.
That's quite
Yeah.
something.
Right, so congestion started to appear in the Glasgow motorway system from around August of 1980. So, that's how long it's been since, we were that quiet.
You get around quickly.
That's certainly something that we can confirm. We have, we've got our morning peaks and our evening peaks, and that's generally when our small RTCs happen, or small bumps in the motorway happen, and a lot of breakdowns happen because cars are sitting in traffic and overheating, and the call volumes for those times drop significantly. We weren't going to coast because there wasn't that build up of traffic on the road network. Everything was relatively free flowing for the vast majority of it. But yeah, we still dealt with what we had to deal with, even though it was during the pandemic, and even now when the roads have started to get busier and people have started returning to work, we're still dealing with what we deal with on a day-to-day basis. We're still stopping folk, we're still speaking with folk, we're still trying to educate folk, we're still, as I said at the start, enforcing legislation when legislation has to get enforced as well.
The other thing I thought you mentioned about having, with the incidents and stuff like that, with the roads being so quiet at that time, it must have, for you to be able to respond to things, you must have got to stuff so much quicker than you did before.
Yeah, it's
a challenge removed, I suppose.
It is. It's also a skill to try and navigate your way through peak time traffic when you've only got 2 lanes and there's nowhere for cars to go, and you need to try and find a way through because there's something serious that's happened up ahead. But yeah, certainly with no cars being on the road, it's a lot easier for us to get to things. It's a lot easier for us to navigate the actual road network as well.
And I suppose even now, 6-7 months in, the motorways are still quieter than normal. I think somewhere between 10 and 20% quieter than what was considered normal pre-pandemic. And, that's noticeable in terms of the congestion we're not having on the motorway system at the moment.
People are working from home now. They've realised, that this works and that's what they're going to do.
I mean, there's one or two, maybe half an hour or so at the moment that seems to be reasonably busy in the usual hotspots, but very quickly disappears. And obviously there's no events in the evening. The football has been happening, we know fans or supporters present. So, that has taken away those weekend peaks and evening peaks as well. So, yeah, it's a very different network to what we had, even in January, February. And it must be noticeable, not just for Nick and people working in policing, but for deliveries and goods drivers as well.
That's what I was going to say, is journey time reliability is wonderful at the moment. Normally before the house, I check the maps on Google. I don't know if do you guys do this? Check the traffic maps?
Yeah. It's a very useful resource.
I'm a bit of a saddle. I've got a wee script thing set up on my phone that lets me check the Traffic Scotland cameras so I can see where the congestion is and what it's like. Sometimes it takes a couple of minutes to update, but yeah, lets me see an almost live view.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do that anymore. Check these things because it's always quiet.
It has obviously got quiet. I mean, you guys are in jobs where you need to be out and about in the networks. You've seen these things. Some of us, unfortunately, are still working from home.
Also, as well, Nick, with at the peak of the lockdown, when there's very little traffic on the road, there probably would have been very little incidents. Am I right to assume that, or would you guys have still been busy?
Certainly reduced. It's certainly reduced. However, it's not zero. Like I said just at the start, people were sometimes travelling faster than what they should have been just because they weren't used to the roads being that empty. Because they're travelling faster than what they should have been, they might not have anticipated the road conditions the way they should have, or the bend might have been a bit sharper than what it would have been when they were travelling at stops traffic. So yeah, we still had to respond to incidents. We still had to deal with things. But no, certainly not a zero. We certainly want to sit and eating donuts or drinking coffee.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this brings me on to my next question. Okay. So, Nick, you work shifts, day, night, back. I suppose you can include this with a lockdown or whatever, be pre-lockdown. What time of day is your job most challenging on the motorway network?
It's always going to be peak time traffic for us, and it's just trying to respond to incidents and trying to deal with incidents as they occur as well. Yourself, we've got certain parts of the motorway network in Glasgow that doesn't have any hard shoulders, and it means if something happens, if there's a 2-car bump or a 3-car bump or whatever it is, and cars are immobilised, you've effectively taken a whole running lane away.
You want to try and deal with that as quick as you can as well to get...
Yeah, we need to try and keep the road network moving. As long as there's no serious injuries or life-threatening or changing injuries, we want to try and keep the road network moving as smooth and as fast as possible. Lockdown or no lockdown, it still builds traffic up as soon as one of those lanes are blocked.
So just to jump in on that question then, so would you say that your role then has a different focus depending on the time of day that you're working? So if you're in the middle of a night shift, for example, are you more likely to be dealing with other things than, say, obviously RTAs or the sort of a run-of-the-mill stuff? Does the focus of the job change depending on the shift?
Yeah, most definitely. Like say your night shift, especially pre-lockdown, you're talking about, and I hate to categorise everybody all in the same one, but the motorway network in Glasgow night shift, especially at the weekend, you've normally got drunk folk at, have missed their last bus home or last train home, and have only ever driven back up the road. So they think, the quickest way I know is to jump on at 18 or 19 and start walking in the motorway. And yeah, that can get a bit interesting.
Yeah.
Peak time traffic, it's generally your fender benders, your 2-car bumps, just somebody into the back of somebody else, or cars overheating and breaking down and not being able to move. But these type of things can happen at any time. Car failures, lack of driving skills, it can cause issues in the network at any time, day or night. It's there's not really any what would I say? Every shift is challenging. That's the best way.
Of course.
Every shift is challenging.
Every shift brings its unique challenges, I'm sure.
I'd imagine, Nick, as well, when there's big events going on, you guys are briefed prior to that. Say, by the way, there's a big concert on tonight at such and such a time, that things might get a bit hairy during that.
Yeah, we get told all that as well, but that's where, let's say, your local councils come into play. Travcom, Glasgow City Council, they control quite a lot of traffic lights as well. Take for instance, Ibrox. To access that, you can right off the motorway at junction 23 and junction 24. Those traffic lights on game days, when it's busy, have to be controlled so that you've not got traffic backing up onto the motorway. It's a big team game.
Yeah, absolutely. There's multiple stakeholders involved, and and as John and I know, certainly from our side of things, that there are many meetings that go on behind the scenes to make sure everybody's pre-briefed and prepared for these big events, and they're all discussed often at length, months in advance sometimes.
Well, the public don't often appreciate it. They always moan at the time, but we try our best. Well, so I'm going to move on to the next question now. This one's about electric vehicles, okay? To get your perspective on this, Nick. Do you see electric vehicles becoming a thing for the police to use? And, if they were, what challenges or benefits might these have?
They definitely are becoming something for the police to use. There was a press release, I think it was maybe just near the start of the month, that Police Scotland are going to install, it's about 1,000 charging points, I think, across police stations. And it's part, right? Yeah. It's part of an ongoing thing where they're trying to be Police Scotland are trying to bring the world's first possible EV fleet into use.
Okay.
So I think, they're looking at bringing in electric vehicles for
probably
for
initially for regular uniformed police officers initially, and then the traffic might get it later.
Yeah, I can see the traffic getting them at some point. Certainly, looking at the type of cars that's available, there is certain ones that I would like to drive as a traffic officer. There's no two ways about it. Whether or not we get them, I don't really know. But yeah, it's something that is going to come. It's something that is going to have to come. It's the whole carbon emissions. It's trying to reduce your carbon footprint in the world. And there's no two ways about it. Policing does use a lot of vehicles, and by taking a lot of those carbon
emissions,
and
you're using them all day.
As
well. And I take it the vehicles you're using them are diesel.
The ones that we have just now, we run a mainly diesel fleet in the road policing unit. I think the vast majority of police cars in Police Scotland just now are a diesel fleet. I think it was just more cost effective.
Yeah, I suppose there's an onus on all public bodies to be, and private companies, to be looking at how their carbon footprint is managed going forward, and to become more sustainable.
We need a bit more than just token gestures, like a couple of charges in the car park. It does need to be part of a whole strategy.
Indeed, and that's why we're looking at things like hydrogen double deckers, and there's a project for the Forth Road Bridge. I think it's a CAV Forth project where there'll be electric buses, and
autonomous bus they looked at using. Nick, have you actually have you driven an electric car? Have you had a go of one?
Closest one I've driven is a BMW i3, and the police have a couple of BMW i3s that are used mainly for non-uniformed officers as part of the ultra low emissions fleet that Police Scotland are trying to bring in.
Are they fully electric or are they hybrid?
They are electric with range extenders, I want to say. It's the ones with the wee petrol engine in the back. It uses just to charge the battery up as it goes.
Yeah.
The wee i3 it's a small car. It's a tall car. It's a 19-inch wheels. I think they're about an inch thick. They're an inch wide.
we tried one, Stuart. We tried a little Zoe. Do you remember that?
That's right. Yep.
And that was really nippy, wasn't it? It was a lovely wee car to drive.
Yeah, it felt like being in a remote controlled car.
Yeah, they're very, very responsive. That's what I found about them. But the whole thing is they're great until you need to charge them. That's what the problem is.
And that's where the infrastructure obviously has been looked at and improved.
To catch up.
Yeah, there's charge points. I was in Pitlochry recently and noticed that there were a number of new charge points that had been put in there at one of the public car parks, and they were rapid charge. So also designed for people maybe going to Inverness from Perth or whatever and be able to stop and, I
was going to say that's a brave place on a big long distance route, taking an electric car. The only electric cars I'd feel safe going kind of intercity to that extent or up north would be like Teslas, because they have
the longer range,
much longer ranges.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see what the next 10 years or so brings with electric vehicles and policing in particular.
Yeah, it's different. I can speak from, let's say, the Glasgow network or the Greater Glasgow Renfrew and Clyde side of things, where we have a large amount of people, a large amount of infrastructure nearby. But, you need to remember there's other places across the whole of Scotland, and there's rural communities that you need to go to as well, and there's rural communities that need to be policed. Yeah. And sometimes, but EVs at the best of times, if you're pushing them hard, they'll drain the batteries faster. And the last thing you need is to be heading on a really long distance journey, and if it's a response police heading to something and they're pushing the car, they're pushing the batteries, the last thing you need is to get like 3/4 of the way there, when you would normally be able to complete it in a full charge. Because you're going or pushing the car a bit harder, you might run out of charge.
I absolutely noticed this with the Renault Zoe fully electric that I drove for a week, Nick. Driving at 50, on the motorway, it seemed to be far more economic, but going at 70, it half the range, the projection on it.
And I suppose the reliability is a big thing with these cars and the adoption of these cars, widely.
We haven't had them long enough to know what's the big long-term problems with these. Do the batteries get lazy after a while, or, we don't know.
I suppose battery capacity is one of these technologies that's constantly being looked at, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Yeah, so hopefully that'll move forward. I suppose, like Nick says, you have to consider areas like Argyll and Bute or Highland, where there are large distances between towns and villages and things like that.
I think maybe you can clear this up, Nick, just an extension of this. Is on these very remote parts, do they use kind of Land Rovers at the moment?
No, generally, within Police Scotland, it's generally a standard fleet that we run. So you'll have your BMW X5s. That's normally the 4x4 style vehicle that we'd use for these type of things. Your BMW 5 Series vehicles that we use, still a couple of 3 Series vehicles in there. Generally, that's a fleet that we use, and they are capable, or more than capable, of what's happening. Some more remote areas need specialist vehicles like the Land Rovers. They are very few and far between, and they are a very specialist vehicle that's used for very specific things.
Right.
But for the most, Defenders, but for the most it's BMWs.
Well, it's good because we're talking about cars, because the next question, Nick, is about cars. This one actually comes from Robert Jennings, who's asked the question on social media, and he asked, what is the best car you've ever had for road policing that you've used, your personal favourite?
The best one, the one that I use daily, I prefer getting out in a BMW X5. I'm quite tall. I find the X5 is quite comfortable for me. And it means because it's an X5, it's also a good towing vehicle, so it means that I can clear things quickly as well if it's appropriate to do so. The best car, however, I've driven was a BMW X3 M140i.
So that's
M40i. Right. Smaller than the X5, but it was a demo car that was given by BMW to the police, and they make these cars, they make them to exceed the Home Office specifications. They make sure that it's tested by the Met. The Met say, listen, this could be a police car that we could use. And then they put it out to other forces to say, look, what do you think about this car? What could we change about this car? How can we make it better for specific use in specific instances that users will be using it? And one of the demo cars we had was that BMW X3, and it was an M40i. And that was a lovely car to drive. That was really nice.
But I take it they didn't adopt them in the end. They went for the X5.
It's part of a procurement process. So what happens is they come up, they let us see it, we give our feedback on it, and it then goes to somebody who takes all the feedback, and then they decide what happens next. Don't know when that procurement process finishes, if it's still ongoing, or what happens next from it.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I don't know how they go and get their vehicles and see what other forces think. It's another question here. This is kind of one I've come up with myself. It's also on vehicles. Autonomous vehicles are coming at some point now. Fully autonomous, I know you can't have them on the road here in the UK, but in America they have that in some places.
Why can't we have them here in the UK?
I think there needs to be, you can have certain assistance, but I don't know why. It's just not the law. I think it's
Legally, you mean, right?
Legally.
So I thought you meant technologically or environmentally. So, right, okay. So
as far as I mean, this is just kind of
the technology's not quite there for that, but yeah, right, okay.
So, Nick, in a world where the majority of these autonomous vehicles are on the roads, how would that make you feel? Would it kind of diminish the need for road policing?
I don't think it will diminish the need for road policing per se. As a road policing officer, we want the roads to be safe, and autonomous vehicles certainly assist in making the roads safe. You're still going to have a large element of drivers that will never relinquish control over to autonomous vehicles because they want to be in control and they don't trust cars, they don't trust drive-by-wire, they don't trust computers that can calculate things at 10 times the speed of a human brain can. They think, no, it's still going to be slower than what I can.
Yeah. Some people just like driving and like being in control.
Enjoy the process of actually driving,
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. So there is always going to be a need for roads policing. Right. I think it will help substantially, especially in serious incidents and collision avoidance. I can see us still being used for quite a while because ultimately you're still going to have issues. You can make all the autonomous vehicles in the world, you're still going to have humans on the road, whether they be behind the wheels of a car or whether they're walking next to it, cycling next to it.
And you get, I suppose, one of the supposed benefits of these cars is that you get a more efficient use of road space.
Of course you do, because
they can queue management and things like that.
Closer together.
Yeah, so you can have a convoy of 10 of these things, a very small spacing, but entirely predictable because the computers are all working with one another or whatever. So I'll be interested. It's interesting to see how the existing roads network develops to accommodate these cars.
I remember speaking about this with you guys before. It was a video by CGP Grey online that shows just how efficient electric or autonomous vehicles can make a normal road network. Even just something an a crossroads or an intersection, you've got a lot of stop and go, and it's that concertina effect where cars just slow down and it takes ages for them to catch up again. If everything's all computer and electronically controlled,
you won't get a phantom traffic jam.
Yeah, so I mean that could be a benefit in itself.
And face it, Nick, you're never going to end up, well, hopefully not in a having to do a pursuit with an autonomous vehicle.
Would there not be some override function so that the police can demand it stops?
Exactly. They could probably have some control, like a whole smart network of cars or something like that.
Sure, that's something that's still to be looked at. But
worst comes to the worst, just set all the traffic lights to red and it has to obey them.
Well, in Glasgow in 1980 we were able to do that. I don't know if we're able to do that.
There's things they were talking about. This is a bit far out there, but they were talking about autonomous airlines, autonomous commercial flights.
Yeah, no thanks.
And they were worried that these could be hacked. You know what I mean? So you'd have autonomous vehicles. There's always that kind of risk
of them
that
being
there could be kind of malicious
by some malicious foreign power or something like that,
or whoever, or somebody having a laugh, and then it causes problems.
Yeah, let's not even contemplate such things.
That's what the podcast is for. So,
but this is something they're going to have to look at before they decide whether they're going to allow fully autonomous vehicles on the road network in the UK. These are all things that are going to questions.
Where
are
is
going
the
to have
legislation
to be
at the moment, though? I mean, do you know anything about it, Nick? Is it anything that's you hear about?
Certainly nothing I've had to deal with yet.
Okay.
Legislative wise, every electric vehicle or semi-autonomous vehicle I've dealt with have all been fine and no issues whatsoever. So no, there's certainly nothing I would be aware of that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, this is a history podcast primarily, and we're supposed to tie it into the history of the motorway
talking
system.
about the future.
And we're talking about the future, but let's tie it into history. If we were to go back to 1960, right, when the guys are considering the network and they're designing this network for 30 years ahead, think of some of the big ideas that they thought were coming down the line. We've got reports in the archive that talk about personal helicopters, by the year 1990 or the year 2000. I mean, we've got that booklet, Transport in the Year 2000, that envisages that most people will have a car that can transform itself into a plane or a helicopter and that they can fly from A to B.
It's like the Jetsons.
Yeah. So is there any reason to believe that the way we're thinking about these autonomous vehicles coming down the line in 20 to 30 years, is it as pie in the sky as that idea turned out to be? Or do you think this time it is actually a reasonable concept or proposal because the technology maybe has moved on?
I think for me looking at it, I'd say I definitely think that this is something that is going to be happening. It is happening elsewhere in the world just now. The technology is there and it is advancing at quite a fast pace. It isn't even just the road network we're on just now, because you've got like the Tesla's other company, the boring company. They're currently drilling big massive holes underneath Las Vegas just now just to prove that they can increase capacity by making a different road network, but they can cut journey times just by drilling underneath something.
Yeah.
You know, all these things I don't think there's pie in the sky is what some people think now, because they are being practiced.
And I wonder how a network like the Glasgow motorway system, designed very much for motor vehicles, in the traditional sense, will adapt to suit autonomous vehicles, and the whole decarbonisation of transport as we talk about.
Yeah, the way I've often thought of how they would be introduced is autonomous vehicles would probably only be allowed to operate on motorways first, rather, because, you know, they just due to the geometry, you don't have things like pedestrians and other things like that to worry about. You know, the standards in which motorways are kept in is higher than, say, a street, because these things rely on the white lining being very good and stuff like that. So maybe the Glasgow will actually fare quite well. It could be a trial city for such things because it has so many motorways.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't considered that maybe motorways were better suited to them than other roads.
Of course they are, because, and I think that in this initial period where you can only use them on the motorway, as soon as you go on the motorway, the vehicle would then take over. And when you go off the ramp onto a local road, it just comes back under your control because it can't deal with the...
Or becomes semi-autonomous.
Semi-autonomous, yeah.
I mean, I almost consider my car to be semi-autonomous in the sense that it's got adaptive cruise control. So, right, so if I'm seeing a long stretch of motorway, seeing the M74 heading towards Carlisle, I can put the cruise control on at 65 and I can sit in lane 1, and the car will never collide with anything in front because if it detects a truck in front or whatever, it slows down and, you know, it'll adjust itself to suit. So
they're just kind of safety, driver aids is what I call them.
Yeah. But what makes that any different to a semi-autonomous vehicle? Is it the fact that you know, I'm still in control of the steering wheel?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
sit back.
I think all that's doing is just slowing you down and speeding you up. As a driver, you still have to pay attention
to move
your
over and that kind of thing. I suppose the semi-autonomous vehicle, the fully autonomous vehicle would move into lane 2 itself.
But some vehicles already have that. They've got kind of they keep you in your lane and stuff like that.
Some Fords not got something like that, and and then some Fords have got parking assist. And
I'm
all
just
that sort
thinking
of
of a
thing as well.
scenario here where Nick has had to deal with an incident and somebody's blamed it on a driver aid or a semi-autonomous function.
I suppose the point would be there that there should be data loggers on board that are constantly monitoring everything that vehicle is doing and any overrides and things like that. And that would be your fail-safe against that kind of excuse. Yeah, potentially. All right, okay.
Anything else you want to say about that, Nick, before we move on to our next question?
No, I certainly know that Teslas themselves, they record a lot of information on them. There was a case, I think it was last year, where a Tesla was involved in a collision with a cyclist that was walking with a bike across like a 6-lane highway.
I remember this,
And it was a department, the highways traffic administration, I can't remember what it's called in America, but they literally downloaded everything that they could from the Tesla and found that the driver was at fault, even though it was an autonomous mode. It was the driver at fault because he still should have been able to react to what was happening outside.
You can't sit in the back seat while you've got to be there at the wheel ready. You know, that's what I think.
So that was the last update I read. I don't know what the latest updates are for it, but that was the last I read, that he was technically going to be held at fault because even though it was autonomous, he still should have been in a position to take control of the vehicle or do something to avoid that collision.
Yeah, and you know, I never think about anything else when I hear about these vehicles or people talking about these autonomous vehicles. I always think of the American guy who sued the RV manufacturer in America for millions because he decided to go for a pee when he was driving down some highway in America and left the wheel, and he said, well, you told me it had cruise control, and it ploughed off the road down an embankment or something.
So he went into the back to use this. Dear.
I'd heard that, and
common sense.
Yeah, I'd heard that, and I heard that's why I think it's the first page of that manual now states for every Winnebagos that you cannot leave this vehicle whilst it's being driven.
I always think of that when I hear about autonomous vehicles and
stuff.
Thank
goodness it was a P and not a number 2.
He wouldn't have had much time. Yeah. All right. Okay. On that note, next question.
Okay. So we're not talking about cars anymore. There's one from me. So why do the police use motorbikes or motorcycles, Nick? Surely a police car is better to carry all the the gear, or if you've got to transport a prisoner. What's
Yeah.
having fun?
Again, it's different utilities. It's different tools that we use for different parts of the job. When I'm out in my X5, yes, I can take prisoners or arrested persons in it. I can also deal with moving vehicles out the way. However, like I says, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes trying to beat your way through peak time traffic, and you're trying to fight your way through and make a third lane essentially to get through to get to someone. That's something that the motorbikes excel at. They are big bikes, but they're still a lot skinnier than what an X5 or a BMW 5 Series is, and they can get themselves through gaps that you wouldn't think would be possible. Likewise,
so streets as well, it could be quite handy.
Yeah.
Like that. Are you talking about that parting the Red Sea effect? You've
Exactly.
Everyone's you make a third lane. Yeah. Okay.
That's it, yeah. But likewise, they're also a lot more nimble and a lot faster off the mark, so they can they can scoot through these tight spaces and then accelerate away, and that's it. And the next thing you know, they're gone. You're struggling to try and keep up with them. They're also used quite a lot for big major events. Directing traffic.
Funnily enough, when I was on the M8 on Saturday, or above the M8 on Saturday, and I saw one of the team coaches being escorted by police outriders. So that kind of role, the security role, anybody's ever seen footage of politicians or,
there's plenty of videos on YouTube of it. There's a lot of folk that sit and record these things on YouTube.
Into that sort of thing. Now, Nick, a question that's come from me, and I genuinely don't know the answer to this, and other people might be asking the same thing. Are the bikers, are they part of the same team that you're in, as part of road policing, or are they a separate division?
No, they're part of the road policing unit. They're the motorcycle unit within the roads policing division, if you like, or operational support division. So they work with us, we work with them. Sometimes we go out and do the same job, sometimes we go out and do different things. Likewise, there's times that when the guys in the bikes might have to come in and crew a car to assist us. So, they are multi-skilled, they can do a multitude of different things as well.
Right, so they can jump in and do a car and ride a bike, but can you go out and ride a bike and come back to a car, or is it all dependent on skills and training and all that
skills and training.
Yeah, that's fine. That's an interesting one. People might be worth thinking that.
Yeah. Okay. This one's a question I've got that kind of goes back to some technology in vehicles. So everybody seems to have dash cams these days. What effect do these have on your job or when you're dealing with incidents? Have you got anything you can tell us about that?
Initially, they can sometimes take an awful lot of guesswork out of something, or they can help to apportion blame or lack of blame to incidents. We go to something and person A says it was person B that caused it, person B says it was person A that caused it, and there's no other evidence to the contrary. It's literally just the two of them. It's saying one against the other. Yeah. You have a quick look at the dash cam footage, and sometimes it proves, it was person A that caused it, and other times it's inconclusive. They do help, and I would certainly rather have video evidence if something's happened than not have anything at all. But what a lot of folk forget as well is that dash cams, they don't just record the picture that you see with your eye. Dash cams, when you look at it, they can sort of warp the picture ever so slightly, so it sometimes makes things look even closer or sometimes further away than what it actually is as well.
Yeah, that's right, because they're quite wide lenses on them, obviously, to try and capture as much as possible. But I didn't think about that, so it can distort things as well.
The insurer's best friend. They're great from an insurance point of view.
You use one, don't you, Stuart?
I use two. Yeah.
You got one at the back.
I've got one at the back as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise, I run two. I've got one at the front and one at the back as well. It's best evidence. I'd rather have something there to record should something go wrong and never have to use it.
Yeah,
definitely.
It's nice to have, isn't it?
All right.
Okay.
What have you got next?
Well, coming up with my next question. I'm just getting my notes out here. Okay, so a bit of a kind of a hypothetical scenario here for you, Nick. It's one of these myth things. If it's a hot summer day and I've decided to go out for a drive and I'm going to be wearing flip-flops or even bare feet, is that legal? Would I get in trouble? Because I've heard some people say you shouldn't wear, or you should wear appropriate footwear, or you can get pulled over for wearing flip-flops. Any truth in this?
We're going to have a chat if you're wearing flip-flops, John. We're going to have a chat.
Well, sorry, man sandals then.
No, this one we defer back to the highway code. I think it tells us everything that we need to know about driving and what is and isn't the rules. And the highway code says that you should wear appropriate footwear for the vehicle you're driving to ensure that you can use the controls appropriately when you are driving, and it's not going to hinder you from using those controls. Okay. So if you're wearing flip-flops and if there's a chance that those flip-flops can get entangled or bent and could stop you from either accelerating or braking or doing something to control the car, then yes, it's not right. It's not right. Sorry, you shouldn't be wearing them. You should be wearing more appropriate footwear.
Yeah, and John wears socks with his sandals as well, so they slip about even more.
No, I don't. No, I do not.
That's
the fashion police he needs.
Yes, that's a referral to the fashion police for John. It's going to be white socks as well, isn't it?
Oh,
Blue
it is.
sandals.
So just to make that really clear, being serious again, guys, bare feet would be a no-no because that's just no footwear at all. You know?
Yeah.
Surely bare feet would be better than flip-flops because bare feet don't have anything that are going to slip off or get tangled up.
It's true, but it's kind of sore on your feet.
You'd hope not, and I would say it's more just to do with the pain factor types of things because pedals are all different sizes, and if you go and try and slam on the ankle with the arch of your foot, and you're not used to having that much pressure applied to it, you know, it's knee-jerk reaction. You pull your foot off when you should have been braking, and
Oh,
okay.
well.
Good point. Good question, John. And we now know that you wear socks and sandals.
I don't. I was just.
flops.
I don't even. I'm not even going to say any more about it. I'm just going to move straight on to the next question.
It's when he wears the denim hot pants to go with them. Like that's when it's the real problem.
That's not true either. Right. The
Well,
photos.
thanks very much for having me on, guys. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But we did say it was going to be a down to earth podcast, didn't we?
It is, yeah, with some of these factoids, as I call them, put in there. Okay, so next question. This is about the speed camera vans, Nick. The speed camera enforcement vans, you parked on bridges, laybys. Are these also traffic cops, or are they something else? Do you ever work with these guys? Do you know much about it?
So just to be clear, we're not talking about the tryst vehicles that sit at the side of the road that people often get confused with speed camera vans.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
No, proper speed camera vans. Yeah.
Proper speed camera vans, yeah.
No. They're part of the safety camera unit, the Strathclyde Safety Camera Partnership. They are part of the police. We don't generally work in the vans with them. However, we do assist them with inquiries and stuff that they have as well.
Okay.
They are fairly autonomous, I think is one of the best words to use for it. They are given data by local councils and from us of crash sites or sites where speed has been an impact in a number of crashes, and they're sent out to try and reduce those crashes. In short, it's a visible deterrent to try and slow people down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've said time and time again, both us and the Safety Camera Partnership, we'd love it if no one sped. We'd love it. There'd be no issues with that whatsoever. Unfortunately, people do, and it is generally a big contributor to road traffic collisions. That's why these folk go out and they sit at the hot spots. A lot of people say, oh, they're sitting in spaces, it's, you know, easy money for them to sit at. They're going to sit here, it's just because you can get people with big speeds. It's not safe if you get back.
Or something.
And the locations
If
are
you get
always
back and have a
published
look at
online. Yeah, I mean, they're not hidden away. I mean, anybody can go onto the Safety Camera Partnership website and see the locations, be it for mobile or fixed cameras.
That's not a well-known fact, that, Stuart,
Well,
but it is true.
Well, that is now. There you go.
You heard it here.
I mean,
look online, yeah.
The Safety Camera Partnership have their own Twitter feeds, and they tell people when they're going out, and they say to people, you know, this is it, and this is a list of the locations it will be at. And as you say, Stuart, it's all updated in the website. Yeah. And if you have a look, a lot of people don't have access to it. There is a number of websites now that collate all road traffic collision data. If you have a look at where the major or serious crashes are in relation to speed and correlate that with where the Safety Camera Partnership vans sit, you'll generally find it's roughly exactly the same bits. And it's purely to influence driver behaviour.
Yeah, exactly. They're not there for any, you know, they're not there to make money, as you say. And it always annoys me when I see that sort of a thing being peddled.
One thing I have noticed is they're never in the same spot for very long. They seem to go to a few different sites in the day, you know, because I've seen it where I've driven up a road, I've seen it, and then come back around again. They're not there.
Somewhere else, yeah.
So they're obviously busy. So I'm going to move on to probably the final main question I have for you, Nick. Okay, and it's question 11, which is what's your kind of biggest pet hate about the Glasgow motorway network? Now, this has nothing to do with driver behaviour, but it might be something to do with certain conditions on the road, areas, and things you might see on the roadside that might make your job annoying or whatever, or it just generally annoys you.
That's
or
a tough question, John.
But it's just like, you know, what's a thing that you're not too keen on out there that doesn't involve drivers?
You know, I actually don't know if it's maybe just because I'm used to the road network now in Glasgow, but certainly I don't have a lot of annoyances. The ones I've brought up before that can be a bit difficult to deal with is like, say, again, that comes back to drivers on reporting things and try to figure out where things are.
Poor location,
Yeah, just try to figure it out. I'd probably need to side with Stuart and say that the bit that gets my back up ever so slightly is the Blockhairn exit on the M8, where there isn't a mini roundabout down there just to try and ease traffic congestion, but that's off the motorway network, so not really on it.
Yeah, Junction 13, yeah, westbound offset.
Yeah, the only other thing, personally, and this is just from a driver perspective, I would like to see more paint on the roads, and that sounds silly, but it's mainly for the likes of your a 5-lane section coming up to junction 15 where you've just joined from the M80. You're expecting people who have stayed on the M8 to return to the leftmost lane, but eventually that leftmost lane's a 2-lane drop. It comes off at Cathedral Street.
Of course,
it is a considerable distance, but it's still short enough. Should you really be getting into lane 1 just to come back out into lane 3 again? Is that, so more paint on that section of road there, just to say, look, this is going to be a dedicated 2-lane drop. Just stay where you are. You're happy. And
you mean a kind of a thing where if they were extending what we call kind of like the 1-on-1 markers, so to show that that's going to split and go off. Yeah,
essentially that's it. But again, the paint that's on the road just now follows all the required regulations and guidelines. It's laid down. It's what's meant to be there. That's why I said it's just a personal thing for me. It's just me, and it's just to save that unexpected weaving or people moving it. Not that anybody returns to the leftmost lane anyway, but still.
People should know. People shouldn't have to be reminded of these basics. And middle lane hogging in the Glasgow system has been a problem since day one.
Of course it has, and it comes from people knowing, I need to be in this lane eventually, so what's the point in changing? This is a huge rabbit hole. We've been down it before. Something that really annoys me, it doesn't really have any effect on driving or anything, but is graffiti. That really does seem to wind me up. I suppose it is when it's on signs and stuff, but there's so much of this.
Graffiti...
It's getting really bad in Glasgow. It is an epidemic of the last few years.
There's some tit for tat graffiti tagging going on that is becoming quite frustrating, and I'm sure it's been looked at by a whole raft of agencies because it must be very expensive to deal with.
Yes.
Yeah, because to deal with that, you're talking about shutting lanes of motorways just so your guys can get in there and deal with the actual structures themselves and paint over. And I think it was a couple of days ago, Glasgow's been deemed the worst city in the UK for graffiti now.
Oh, goodness sake. And there was something in 5 years that would not have been the case. That's really sad. That is really sad. And I find it an absolute scourge. I utterly detest graffiti of any kind.
You said there, Stuart, it's tit for tat stuff. It really is that type of graffiti of two kind of factions doing it. We should both give factions grey paint and tell them to cover each other's tags and get them to do it for us. There you go.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that is a bit of a pain. And of course, there's safety implications for the people doing the tagging as well. It's like some of these locations where there's tagging going on, you would never dream of going near on foot as a pedestrian.
I don't know about you, Nick. I mean, I've done quite a lot of night shifts, but I've never caught somebody doing graffiti at any of these places. But I have heard stories of folk running across the road that they've been spotted going and doing it.
I think they are that fast at doing it. They come out, it's under the cover of darkness. They're coming out, and they are smart about it. They are coming out when there's not a lot of traffic on the road. It's not like they're coming out during peak time and doing it. They're doing it when it's the middle of the night.
At least they're risk assessing it.
Yes.
That was a joke. But
it's but no, you're right. I do agree with you, because there's nothing worse when you're coming through and you see the graffiti on there and you're just
very unsightly. I mean, there's parts of the M8 that were graffitied recently that hadn't been touched in the 50 years that they had been there. It's things like that are really quite frustrating.
But you're right, Nick. It is a huge ordeal having to shut lanes and go out and do it, because that's what an operating company has to do, and some of them are really difficult to get to, and our guys have to be safe in removing it.
Yeah, because it isn't just a one-man job to get down there with a can of paint and a roller to cover it up, because you're talking about a coning crew to put it out. You're talking about the control rooms to do all the lane closures themselves. Your coning crews, you've got everybody else that has to come down and do it. So eventually, it's a lot of folk and very expensive to clean up what somebody's done with a £1.50 can of spray paint.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got a final question, I think, before we move on and talk about some of the things we've been up to. It's a question for Nick.
Right.
And if you were to take all the adverse types of weather that affect roads, operating conditions and the like, so snow, ice, wind, rain, all of them, what is your least favourite?
Anything that isn't sunny.
Yeah, basically.
Snow is an absolute nightmare because people just don't know how to drive when it starts to snow and it starts to come down thick. It was a couple of years ago, and there was nothing I don't think any of the road operating companies could do to combat the amount of snow that fell in that short space of time. And people were still driving as if it was a nice sunny day, and that's just not how you do it.
Because it's so few and far between now, snow days.
We're not used to
a lot of younger
anymore.
drivers now don't have the same experience. Like my dad, for example, he doesn't really worry too much about snow when he's driving because he remembers that snow was a common occurrence in a lot of the winters in the 60s and the 70s.
You're totally right. It's not that common anymore.
Yeah. I thought you might actually have said something like low sun because I know low sunlight can be a real pain in terms of...
That is a big contributor to congestion. I used to commute from west to east in the morning and then vice versa, which is obviously the sun rises in the east. But I figured it was easier to move and commute the other way than try and reverse the rotation or the orbit of the...
Just move to the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, exactly.
Your low sun certainly isn't as bad as low sun and a wet road. So low sun
that's
and
right.
a wet road. It's sort of just...
Yeah, some early morning showers or dew or whatever on the road.
That's it. The sun visor ain't doing nothing for that bit where you've got a blinding sun that's still striking you from the pavement, from the road underneath and hitting you. No, in order, it would probably go for me, it would go heavy snow, and then it would go rain, heavy rain like we've had recently. It can overwhelm the road network just with the amount of water that comes down in such a fast period of time. And that can cause issues. And again, back to drivers not really driving to the conditions.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
There's one weather condition that you haven't mentioned is very rare.
Fog?
No.
Good old fog?
No. Freezing rain. Now, freezing rain doesn't really happen in this country, but that can, that's super cooled water that when it comes down as raindrops, it freezes instantly and turns to black ice.
Yeah.
It will glass an entire road. It has happened a few times in Scotland, and it is a case of you shut the roads. And that's the most frightening weather phenomenon that I think can happen on the network.
Fair enough. All right. Well, on that happy note, John.
No worries.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate your answers. And your honesty, as always. I'm sure it's enlightening for a lot of people listening. It is for us.
Yeah, it's good to have you back on.
Yeah. Okay, the last few minutes then of this podcast, let's give you an update on what we're doing. And we've mentioned the last couple of times that we're working on a new website. Yeah, we are. We are working on a new website. I know we're going on about this, but we're actually quite chuffed with what we're working on, and I think it's going to be revolutionary in terms of what was been there before.
Especially if you're on a mobile.
Yeah, it will be mobile friendly, and it will be much more responsive and reactive and modern and current, unlike the existing one, which is quite old-fashioned, if we're honest. So that's our priority. I'm hoping it will launch sometime around Christmas. The key point to make is, though, that the existing website is going to slowly wind down in the weeks ahead. As changes are made to the new platform and things are moved over, some of the existing pages will disappear. Now, some pages will not be coming back. Some pages will not be coming back at all. Some articles will be coming back in a revised format. Given we are looking to be more mobile friendly, our typical articles might go from being something like 5,000 or 6,000 words down to something like 1,500 words, but there'll be more of them. So it makes it a bit more easy to flick through various parts. Okay, so that's something that we're thinking about. So if you are a fan of the website and there's things on there that you like and there's things that you want to, check out one last time, I recommend you do that at some point over the next week or two, because things will start to disappear as we work towards the new style. And I'm hoping that you will like it a lot when you finally get to see it. And there will be a lot more photos available on it. It will be a bit more targeted in the images that we use and what we show, and there'll be galleries and things like that as well available. On the back of that, the digitization continues, and again, we want to say thank you to a number of people who've offered support in recent weeks, but mostly to Eastford Excavations, who have become our first official supporter. So thank you to Andy and the team at Eastford Excavations for their support this year. That has enabled us to really push on with the scanning. I don't know if I said last month, but we've actually scanned more slides in the last month or so than we have in the 10 years up to now. Just with the new kit that we have, which is much more efficient and allows us to scan much more, or many more slides at a much faster rate.
Gone through a rate of slides that would have taken us what would have been, Stuart,
weeks, months
in the course of a few weeks. So
yeah, I mean, amazing. I think I've scanned 400 slides in the last 2 days.
And we've got some, mostly Glasgow stuff, but some great East Coast stuff as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff coming. So the hope is lots of these images will be available on the website as well. One of the key features of the new website actually will be access to our catalogue, our archive. Basically, you'll be able to browse and see what's in the archive. And if there's a specific document that you would like to see, you'll be able to put in a request and say, can I view this, please? Other documents will be made available on the website to view there net. So there's a whole load of things that are coming up that I think people will like.
And we are working on the calendar as well.
Oh yes, the 2021 calendar.
Yeah,
I'm hoping will be available to buy towards the end of November.
Yes.
Late November, and it will be a wall calendar this year. You may remember there was the poll that was run on Facebook and Twitter for those who follow us on there, and the overwhelming majority of people said they would prefer a wall calendar. That actually has its benefits as well, because it's easier and cheaper for us to produce, which then means it's cheaper for you to buy.
Yes, absolutely.
So you'll probably notice quite a big saving this year compared to last year's. Desk calendars are actually quite an expensive product to buy.
It's kind of footery thing. So if you're starting to think about Christmas shopping, or people that might like these kind of things as an interesting gift.
And there's some surprising images going to be in there.
There is. We've got some new ones, of course.
Yeah. It's all new images, of course, all brand new images that haven't been shared on social media before.
Well, brand new historic images.
Brand new historic images, yes.
If you want to look at it that way.
Yeah.
But have a look there. And when did you say, Stuart? Maybe kind of end of November?
Towards the end of November, I would imagine.
We want to get this ready. We want to do it right. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll aim to have them shipped out by Christmas, well before Christmas.
Wonderful.
All right, Nicky, anything else from you that you would like to add?
No, that's as long as those calendars don't have any photos of John in
the sandals,
socks and sandals,
and the denim hot pads.
I'll be happy with that. Oh, wow.
Might make a special one for you.
Yeah, well, that will not have the Glasgow Motorway Archive logo anywhere near it. Let's just say that. So again, if anybody wants to support us, and please feel free to snap one of these up. Between the Kingston badges and various other things we've done this year and the supporters, it really has helped us to move forward. Even some of the software that we've been able to buy and get the subscriptions for, we can do things far more easily than we used to be able to.
Thank you so much for the donations that come through.
We really appreciate that. And a special shout out to Barry Old, who's been a follower and a supporter of us for a long time.
A huge source of information for us.
Worked on the M8 Renfrew bypass, Dalnotter interchange in the A82, the Linklave Spar, the Irvine New Town, various places Barry worked in Scotland. He's from the Wirral, he's from northwest England, and he stays down there at the moment, and they're obviously under tight restrictions at the moment given the current situation, so we hope he's doing well, and we'll hopefully
call on him again for Ayrshire research. Yep,
absolutely. So we will be back again in a couple of weeks. We've got a couple of November episodes coming up, obviously. Then we'll have our normal December one, and then we'll have the Christmas one.
Wonderful.
So 2020 is very much on the way out. And we're hoping that PC Nick will be joining us again for our Christmas special, as he did last year.
Well, if I'm allowed, then yes. Most if you'll have me.
And you might even get to grill us for a change, just to shake things up a wee bit.
Yeah, that would be good.
Lots of questions.
I've got a list of questions, guys. I've got a list of questions.
Well, good stuff. Good stuff. Well, listen, again, Nick, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
That. And John, thank you as always. And of course, as always, if you enjoy these podcasts and you want to hear more, you'll find them all on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can now also find them on YouTube. They're on YouTube as well. Please leave us a review if you listen to us on Apple. It's always good to get some new reviews on there. It helps Apple to share us and make people aware that we exist.
You give us a like on YouTube if you're watching there as well. Also, don't forget we have social media with Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, so you can go there and get your daily fix.
Yeah, and lots of new photos coming up there over the weeks ahead as well. So very worthwhile. So on that note then, thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, Nick.
Okay.
And we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.